Ja się nazywam Rafael Griga i witam Was serdecznie tutaj w kinogramie Fabryce Noblinie na naszym programie The Culture of Beauty La Bioestetyk. Dzisiaj moim gościem jest Klaus Nissen. On jest właścicielem marki H.H. Simonsen, firma, która ma holistyczne podejście do sprzętów fryzjerskich, która tworzy sprzęty jak lukówki, suszarki, ale tak samo nożyczki, kosmetyki do pielęgnacji, do stylizacji włosów. I dzisiaj będziemy rozmawiać, jak wymagające to jest, żeby prowadzić firmę kosmetyczną na rynku B2B, prowadzić firmę światową i tak samo będziemy dzisiaj pokazać ciekawe koncepcje jego nożyczek, które reprezentują coś innego, co aktualnie my tutaj w Polsce na fryzjerskim rynku znamy. Klaus, it's very nice to have you here. I was introducing you that you are one of the owners of H.H. Simonsen.
Correct.
And that you are on the market for over 20 years.
That's correct too, yeah. We started in 2003 when we started our company.
How is it to be a part of a company with such a long tradition and to run this company, to come up with innovations? Like, what is driving you and what was the idea behind H.H. Simonsen?
Well, the first idea was to really start implementing straightening irons to the industry, because they were not really a part of the industry in 2023. So that was our first idea. Second, we saw that the sustainable product wasn't really there. Many producers of electrical tools into straightening iron, those that were there, blow dryers, curling irons, clippers, etc., 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 they didn't have a long-lasting profile. They were all designed to kind of break after a short period of time. So for us, it was really to introduce high-class tool that could last and work for professional use and for a longevity perspective.
Okay, and where do you produce such tools, and how do you make clear that you have an innovative product today, that you have a high-quality product? How difficult is it to make a product today?
Well, it's pretty difficult. First of all, you need to start with the design of the tool, have your designers to create the physical design. Then you need engineers who can put in the electricals and put in the components that are living up to your requirements. And if you want to be innovation, at the same time, you need to work with people that can bring in innovations. In our case, we're using a technology university that are making the first step of the innovation that we want to integrate, and then we complete the idea that they came up with. So normally from raw idea to the final product, we have to count approximately 2 years from we start the process in our brain till we stand with the final product in our hand. So it's a long journey from idea to final product that we have.
Okay. Wow, I can imagine when you produce and when you think of electrical tools like hair dryers, like straighteners, like curling irons, and especially you're developing product as a hairdresser for hairdressers, you need a lot of testing.
Oh yes, you need definitely a lot of testing, but basically, first of all, you need components that are better and more strong in their foundation construction, so they can last for the professionals. You know, for example, as a blow dryer, it has an engine that spins around, and there can be from the cheapest engine to the most expensive engine you can use. There is a time in price compared to the lowest to the most expensive one. You as a consumer or you as a professional hairdresser cannot see into that product, what it contains inside. So it's all about trust for the brand that you're buying. We don't want to go into that area of cheap components, so We need obviously to find the right component that really matches our needs as a professional. And then we have to spend a lot of time doing testing. And we do two types of testing. First of all, we do in-salon testing. So we normally test the product through a period of 6 to 9 months, where it's professionally tested, so we can assure that the product does exactly what we want it to do. At the same time, we do tests at the factory. So for example, our blow dryers, they are tested every single day, where they run 8 hours during the working hour. So they're sitting in testing machine where they can just work on maximum heat, maximum speed, and we can count the longevity of the hours, but we can also measure all the electronics inside, how it operates during these non-stop testing. So for us, we normally test between 6 to 9 months in the period of designing process before we launch the product.
And how do you come up with a new idea for what hairdressers need?
Well, I'm a hairdresser myself, so sometimes I struggle when I'm styling my hair on my customer. I can either struggle or I can see that I'm missing a feature, and then we can go back to the university and saying, can you come up with ideas that can be implemented? So for example, from my point, during the winter in Scandinavia, we have very dry air, and that means that your hair is getting very frizzy. So when I'm a hairdresser working in the salon with my brushes, I get very static hair. So that's why we came up with, we need a different, for example, bonding in ionics, where we combine negative and positive ions instead of only negative as other does. So here we developed like a fishing net where we combine plus and minus that eliminates the frizziness of the hair. So sometimes a new product is developed because I do have a need myself, and if I have a need, I'm pretty sure that all the other hairdressers also have the same needs across the world.
I know the hairdresser you're talking about, and it really fulfills the needs of the Polish hairdressers XL. You're referring to the XS model. What do you think is now, or the Nano model, what do you think is now the biggest requirement from a professional hairdresser? Because we are advancing more, we are going on trainings, they have a high requirement toward professional tools. What, from your point of view, what does every hairdresser need, and how can he maybe evaluate if a tool is good or not?
First of all, I would say that the trend right now is that you have to blow dry quite a lot because you have all these blowouts. And you want to protect the hair as much as possible. You want to create as much shine in the hair as possible. And you want to have the hair as bouncy as possible. So for us, we focused a lot of the air bonding technology, where we ensure that we can keep the moisture molecules inside the hair, and at the same time we can smoothen out the cuticles so it stays more shiny and glossy. So for me, that part is really ensuring that the customer gets the look that they want without too many product that can actually weigh down the hair and damage what the hairdresser just did. When it comes to judgment of a tool as a professional, it's very difficult because you cannot see inside. So you can test it, you can play with it, but it's all about being transparent. So what we like to do is we like to share what type of engine we use, what type of heating technology we're using, so that you have something to compare up against. So we want to be as transparent in the way that we built our product in terms of technology, so it's easier for you to communicate that towards the hairdresser. But the hairdresser itself, they can't really look into it. price point is obviously a thing that you can look to. As I said, an engine can be 4 times more expensive buying the professional versus the cheapest one for consumer. And if I choose to work with a professional engine that is 4 times more expensive, that will also give my price point to be higher. So price point can be something that you can look at, but it's not all, because you never know what's incorporated in a price service from a customer.
Okay. And why should an end consumer buy a professional product and not go to a MediaMarkt, for example?
From my point, it's longevity. It's all about sustainable. If you, as a consumer, buy a product where you know, okay, I can use my blow dryer maybe for 3 to 5 years, then you actually have to throw it out and you have to buy new. That's not sustainable in my point of view, because you have to have a factory that needs to manufacture that product once again. So just by changing the engine to a higher quality with longer hours and longevity in the range, you can have your engines or your blow dryers, for example, to last for 10 or 12 years. And that means that, first of all, you spend less money into buying blow dryers, and you don't have the same electronic waste because your products simply last longer. So for me, it's a different approach to the market. And obviously, when you choose a professional product, you also get features in that professional really requires, such as the air bonding. And that means, as a consumer, you also get more healthy, more glossy hair in your blow drying, rather than just heating your hair and start drying it up so it becomes more fragile. So you get advantage when it comes to healthier hair as well.
Okay. How is it in today's time to run an international company? What are the challenges in today's time? On the one hand, you see costs are going up, the world is more challenging. On the other hand, you have the feeling new products, new brands enter the market every week. How do you see it from your perspective, being in the industry now for 22 years?
Yes, new brands are arriving every day, and brands are also disappearing every day. So you have a certain rotation. First of all, I see that there's so many brands entering the market, but it's not really brands that has done their own product. They are going mainly to China, buying a private label brand, what we call white label. So they have a finished product, you put your labels on and you put it to the market. But there is no uniqueness in this type of product. So you can see 5 other brands in your country with the same shape and features. So for me, I think if you really want to run the long marathon, you need to invest time and money in creating your own design, create your own molds, and put your own products to the market, because that's the only way to really stay in for the long run. Yes, it's more expensive, but I think it's worth it if you want to stay unique in the market. Yes, the trend always changes. So you have hair trends now, it's more like curly and wavy, where 5 years ago it was more like pin straight. So now the focus pivoting from straightening iron more to blow dryers and round brushes and curling irons. So yes, you gotta be forefront when you're looking at the trend. What is the next hair trend, and what do we have of tool that matches that new trend? So you can never go to sleep knowing that tomorrow you can work as normal, because there will be new things popping up, and you need to be able to cherry pick out which one you need to start creating, because we have a two years design and designing plan that we also have to incorporate.
Talking about new products, new products from H.H. Simonsen is the signature line which you brought to us to Poland. It's like a whole new concept, or a new concept of Polish hairdressers when we talk about the scissor philosophy. Can you talk a little bit about it and what makes it so exceptional, so unique, your concept?
Well, yeah, first of all, as a hairdresser, the most important tool I have in my hand is actually my scissor. That's what make my business running. If I don't have my scissor, I have no business, because I cannot survive just by doing blowouts or only doing a hair color. So I think most hairdressers, they would say that 80% of their working time they spend with the scissor in the hand. So it is the most important tool.
Very emotional, what I see. If I show them a
Yeah.
scissor, everybody wants to have it in the hand.
Exactly. So the basic is that the time has again changed. So when I became a hairdresser like 35 years ago, everything was very quality orientated when it came to the steel, the structure, the bone structure of the scissor, the steel. But in the last 35 years, it had changed. So now, instead of being quality orientated, it's all about pricing. And if you're starting to manufacture your steel in a cheaper way, such as castings, what's happening is that you have a very short period of time where your scissor can actually work proper. And it can be just from 3 to 4 months up to maybe 16 to 18 months. These type of scissors cannot really be sharpened because of the steel structure, and that means that after you have worn the scissor out, you need to use them to open your carton boxes in the salon. So your investment is out of business. You don't have more return of investment from that scissor. You have to buy a new scissor, and you have to do it constantly within the next many decades that you're working. At the same time, if I'm looking from a environmental perspective, it's not good to really produce new scissors the whole time. If you, with one change, by doing forged steel, can have a scissor that can travel with you throughout the whole career for 30 to 40 years. It means that I can buy a scissor, I invest in a scissor, and I can keep it running throughout my whole career if I just make a proper service in between every second or third or 4 years. So again, from a perspective of sustainability, you have a scissor that really can be produced only once, instead of maybe buying 10 scissors that has to be produced. So here I have return of investment every single day I go to salon. So that's for me the most important, and that's where we focused on making the proper steel from Japan and making sure that all the nerdy details are taken care of in Denmark rather than in a random factory, because those secrets, how the edges are made, we don't want really anybody to know that, because then it's easier to replicate the cutting concept that we have of our scissor.
Okay. You say forged, you say done in Denmark, so you are making them by hand, you're finishing the scissors by hand. How many people can do this? What kind of other, can you tell us something about the work and the speciality, and is it easy to duplicate for another company?
Well, first of all, the guy who makes scissors, they're called scissorsmith. They can make a scissor, and that's a very small group globally, and it is actually a dying craft. So those scissorsmiths, they don't share the knowledge with anybody outside their community unless a new one comes in and being accepted. And it normally takes between 3 to 4 years to be accepted by the community, and then they start sharing their internal knowledge. It's not a new thing. It has been like that for centuries in Japan. So the masters never ever give away their small details and secret to anyone except before they have been approved by the community. So what we do in Denmark is we have a scissorsmith that has been taught and educated the old classical Japanese way of making the edges. Can it be done by anybody from the street? No, it cannot. So you can do some bits of it, but they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the skill, they don't have the machines, they don't have the water stones, they don't have the buffing wheels, they don't have the compounds to the buffing wheels from the right quality. And if you don't have that, you cannot make it. And you cannot have these tools unless you're part of the community.
Okay. And so to sum it up, what I understand, you have scissors for life. They are handmade by a person who was accepted in the community, and there are not so many people who can do it. And they are even some kind of personalized by hand at the end of the day by the scissorsmith. And how you come up with the design and what are like the scissors, what do you represent with the scissors, what kind of concept do you want to share with us?
Yeah, a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, yes, the scissors are made by hand. So yes, you have the steel plates that a machine cuts out the shape, and then you have the roll grinding. But when you connect the handle and the blade, it's a welding, and that is done by hand. And from there, all the different parts of the scissor will be done by hand. And when we manufacture our scissor, we stop the process at our factory before all the secret starts, and then we travel the scissor to Denmark. So they are like 85% finished. They can't really cut hair. And then we apply the last 15-20% in Denmark, because that's where all the magic happens. The magic doesn't happen when you have to weld the two connections together. It happens on the ends. So for us, that's the essential part that we do. When it comes to design, I think looking back to my entrance to the industry, when I was a young kid, 18 years old, starting become a hairdresser, I like tools. I like buying new scissor. And I saw myself, after maybe 5 years in the industry, I saw myself with like 20 different scissors, but they all did the same. I was always getting disappointed with my scissor. So every time I bought a new scissor, it was like after a few months, it was like, something is missing. I cannot do this, I cannot do that. So for example, I started to slice, to do a lot of slicing, but my scissor could not slice. So instead I found a razor, and then I start razor cutting. All of a sudden I wanted to create very solid line like classical bob, but I was always chasing the hair. The hair was always pushing towards the end of the scissor, so I spent more time doing that haircut. So after a couple of years been working in the industry, I started looking at how can we apply different edge angle, different design on the scissor that actually can help me working faster, smarter, and more accurate. So from there, we started creating a scissor that could cut blunt lines. And from there, one scissor took the other, and today we are like having a bunch that we call 6 scissor that actually can go all the way around effortless. So now if I want to slice cut, blunt cutting, texturizing, thinning, whatever I want to do, I have a unique scissor that can do it without compromises.
Okay.
Yes, I can cut with one scissor, most things, but it's all about compromising. And in my professional work, I do not want to compromise. End of story. At the same time, we start looking at the quality of the hair, and it means that when you have a hair and you take it under the microscope and you cut it with a scissor that is not designed for the haircut, or a scissor that needs a sharpening, you as a hairdresser actually squeezes the hair together and breaks the ends. So you are actually creating damaged ends on your hair. That means that you are creating split ends. They necessarily don't show up in the salon, but after 2-3 weeks, you can start seeing the white dots on the customer's hair, and that you, as a professional hairdresser, that cause this, because you're using a scissor either not designed for the cut or a scissor that is not sharp enough for what you have to do.
I think we want to see your scissors.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to show us some techniques, and why are they so special? Because from my experience, a lot of hairdressers are not aware of the angles, of the possibilities scissors can give you when you talk about blunt, about slicing. So yeah, I'm very happy if you could show something.
Yeah, I will show, but before, yes, it's correctly, hairdressers don't know this knowledge, because in generally there is no companies, there is no sales rep that actually communicating these things. They go around, put scissors on the table and saying, what do you like? And normally they would say, we have one scissor that can do everything. Yes, they can do everything, but not perfectly. So because we don't want compromises, we are working with different designs. So let me show you here. When I have a classical scissor here, that angle between the two blades are decreasing when I'm closing that blade. So it means that here it's like 45 degree, now it's like 30, now it's like 20, 10 and 0. And it means when it's decreasing, it also pushes out the hair towards the tip, so it's actually being physically pushed out of the scissor. When we cut straight lines, we use a combination of different edge design, and that means that that edge, that angle between the two blades are exactly the same throughout the whole process of closing the blade. And that means that all of a sudden the hair stays on the blade rather than it being pushed. And that means all of a sudden you have a perfect scissor for blunt line, scissor over comb, flat cut, graduation, everything the way you just need a solid straight line in no-go.
So this kind of scissor makes you cut faster.
It makes me cut faster. I normally say I can cut a full bob in less than 5 minutes.
I have seen it.
You have actually seen it yesterday, and then you can say, okay, what do you use the rest of the time with? First of all, I use the whole cutting time I have extra, but I use it for personalizing. I use it for slice cutting, adding texture, adding small details to the haircut. So you get all these small bits that really makes the haircut suitable. But the structure, the foundation structure of the haircut, I needed to go fast in, because it gives me more time to do all the funny part. Because honestly, it's not funny cutting a straight line. That's just a job you have to do. So for me, that's a job. All the funny bits is how should those ends sit into your face? How do you want these? Do you want it to bend in or more sit like a wig? All these techniques, they can be added with my scissor after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So let us look at some of the scissors. So I want to show you two different designs that are on the opposite scale. So for me, if I should say, this is like night and day to each other. They could be more opposite each other. Then we of course have something in between. So here I have a slicing scissor that is purely designed to slice cut, because it pushes out the hair and really makes the hair more effortless, and it blends in the hair. You don't get any lines with it. Here you have the opposite, you have the scissor for straight lines. So let me show you how they work.
Super.
So with my blunt cutting scissor, you can simply just add in the whole scissor in the whole length. You don't have to cut with the tip like normal hairdresser do. They will cut and pull back to cut that straight line. It means it's taking longer time. You have more moves in your shoulders. Here I load my scissor in and I close it. So every time I do this, I will have a straight line. Bang, off we go. I can come in if I want to create more like a classical structured haircut. I can come in again, bang, off we go. So I don't have to sit and cut like this. So I save time, as you can see. So for me, this is really the blunt cutting scissor when it's absolutely at its best performance.
Super.
If I go the opposite way, the slicing scissor, I have a scissor that really cannot cut a straight line. So if I take that section up here and I place my scissor and want to create a straight line, this scissor here will just push the hair out. So it will never ever cut a straight line because it's designed to slice cut. It means if I go into the hair and I want to cut, you can see how it's actually curving. So I'm not creating a hole, I'm creating like a faded C shape. So here I can slice cut, very soft, very effortless, and it all blends in without creating any visible effect. So you have an effect, but you cannot see it. I can come in, I can slice cut this way, and the haircut will not be visible from the outside, but you will add in a lot of texture that just sits. So when you apply a bit of product, you have that texture sitting that you can just enhance it with your product.
Okay, amazing. I think a lot of hairdressers does not know about it. So should young hairdressers start with these kind of scissors?
I would say, from my point of view, I would say all hairdresser needs a point cutting scissor. That is what we most will call an all-round type of scissor. Mm-hmm. And all hairdressers should have a straight line scissor, a scissor that cuts a straight line. That should be like basic in your toolkit, almost like toothpaste and a toothbrush. They go together. You cannot brush your teeth without the toothpaste, and you cannot brush your teeth with only the toothpaste. So it is for me that a blunt cutting and a point cutting scissor are essential to have for all hairdressers. Then we need a texturizing thinning scissor, yes. But I would say no, as a young student or as a young hairdresser, you don't need this type of scissor yet. This is more like, I wouldn't say expert, but once you start understanding how texture work in your haircut, once you start knowing what you do is addressing the texture in your haircut, then it makes sense. So I would say that.
So when do you use the slicing, for example?
What
kind of hairdresser would use the slicing? He who has a lot of women on the.
Well, for me, it's like a slicing scissor is for female hair cutting. So if you're a barber, it's not needed because you're not really cutting those softer ends and texture in the barber. So for me, I would say when you are a hairdresser that start really to work more in dry hair, understanding and like to play with texture, it's a really, really great add-on to your cutting level, and your customer will feel the difference. If you're more like a very strict, very solid type of hairdresser, it doesn't necessarily fit that type of cut. Then it's more like the blunt cutting scissor that fits well. So for me, I would say if you are dry cutting, if you are freehand cutting, if you're really a type of hairdresser that likes to play with the hair, it's a perfect match because you will find that this scissor really does what you have in your mind.
Okay.
At the same time.
Okay. And so in your daily work, when you are working with your clients, you definitely use, now if I understand it correctly, you use the normal point cutting.
Yeah.
You use the slicing for women and texture and details.
Yeah.
And you use the blunt cutting for fast work, for straight lines, just to keep the pace up.
Yeah, to keep the pace up, but also to keep the details there. Mm-hmm. So I can compare it with something different. If you're a makeup artist and you roll up as a makeup artist to a photo shoot and you have only one brush with you, yes, can you do all the makeup with one makeup brush? You probably could, but there will be areas where you are in trouble, but you can still apply the makeup, but it won't sit perfect. So as a makeup artist, you have different makeup brushes to various areas of what you do to make sure that it does the line or blurriness as you want. And it's the same here. When I want more blurry ends, this is perfect because it's pushing out. If I take my point cutting scissor and I do the same, it's like using a wrong makeup brush for a blurry moment, because that here is more like a chunk because it's cutting hair. So for me, yes, I alternate between my scissor quite a lot to get cutting speed and to allow me to create the features, the details, effortless and soft without any risk. Because when I slice cut with this, I have no risk, I have no fear, because it's not aggressive, it's soft.
I understand. And what I know about some Polish scissors hairdressers, they do not like thinning scissors. Sometimes they are very not using them or try not to use them. Or end consumers are even asking or saying, I don't want that you use a thinning scissor because of bad experience.
I get it. I get it. First of all, you have to look back to the history. When they were making and introducing the thinning scissor like 40, 50 years ago, they were horrible. Bad steel, and the teeth was straight up like a comb, and they bundled the hair, so they took a lot of hair out. And at the same time, hairdressers started to thin the hair in a wrong way. So you will see hairdressers that are thinning straight on the scalp like this. And I do understand customer doesn't like that type of thinning because it will give a lot of small hair starting to stick out, not day one, but after a couple of weeks. So you see a lot of hairdresser just thinning like this. And that doesn't bring anything except small hair that doesn't do what the rest of the hair will do. So you have like two haircuts in one. The more modern type of thinning scissor, we call it texturizing scissor. And the whole idea is that the teeth are now curved. And instead of having like a loop down where it bundles the hair, we have small grooves or small staircases. And that means that the hair starts to transport itself to the gap between the teeth. And that means all of a sudden, I can come in and I can use my texturizing scissor in different angles and not creating any lines. So I can use it to enhance details rather than destroying the haircut. So I would say that texturizing versus thinning scissor, it's two different ball games, it's two different scissor design. And then I think that is the reason why some companies and some hairdressers really banded these, because they got a hate on these scissors because they used it wrong. For me, I think when you start learning how to drive it, because in my perspective, yes, we can all as hairdresser cut hair, but that's not the same as you know how to drive this scissor correctly. So we can all drive a car in the traffic, but can we drive it perfectly on a racetrack? Not necessary, because we don't know when to hit the accelerator or the brake. And if we don't know, we cannot drive the car on a fast track. So here what we say, you have like a very high quality scissor, like a racing car. And if you should be able to use this in a proper way and really get the maximum out of it, you need to come on our workshop and learn how to drive it. Because when you learn to drive it, it's easier to implement that in your daily work. And that means we have actually elevated the hairdresser's craft. The cutting experience has been elevated to a new level. So we actually develop educators' cutting level with the scissor at the same time, because we want them to know how these scissor works with all the technology that we have built into them.
Okay. And if a hairdresser invests now in these kind of scissors, what kind of steel is it? And he will have it for his life and then he can sharpen it. How often, and what is important, how to take care of the scissors?
Well, first of all, the model I stand with here, it's a hybrid. It's made from ATS 314, which is a private steel from Japan owned by Yamamura. So this steel is probably one of the most exclusive steel in the world. And the hardness of the steel is very hard, means that it doesn't really get damaged by cutting in dry hair. The cuticles in dry hair is harder than when the hair is wet. We know it from our nails. When the nail is wet, it's the same material. They're soft and easy to cut. So when cutting in dry hair, we need edges that can stay strong, that can stay sharp, even cutting in dry hair. And the ATS 314 from Yamamura can really do that job. In our point cutting scissor, we are using a Aichi 440C, which also have a very high strength. So it's a very strong steel. And those two steels will last for you between 30 and 40 years. If you take care of them, such as clean them, oil them, etc.
And sharpening, you do it every day?
Every day, yeah. Sharpening is a different game, because you can say that a texturizing scissor like this doesn't really need to be sharpened that often. I sharpen these of my own every 6 to 8 years in between sharpening. That's actually enough, because the steel is so hard. I'm not using it like 100 times a day. So for me, every 6 to 8 years is enough. When I go to my point cutting scissor, I mainly sharpen them between every 2nd to 3rd years. And if I'm going to my slicing scissor, between 3rd and 4th years. We are not just calling it for sharpening, because when you send your scissor in, we call it renew service. So it's not just about sharpening. We polish the steel. We change the inner washer of the center screw. We unscrew the finger rings. All this will be polished and applied again. And when you receive your scissor back from service, the renew service, your scissor looks like a new scissor again. So it is really a renewed scissor that you will receive, not just sharpened, but also completely polished, so all the small scratches are gone. And that's why these scissors can travel for 30 to 40 years.
And this you do all in Denmark with your scissor smith?
Yes.
So yeah, I know it's a very cheap price, and it's fast, because it's Poland to Denmark. It goes very fastly. So within 2, 3, 4 weeks, you have renewed scissors.
Yeah, I agree. So again,
and you should not send in your scissors to a person who is not involved in the process of making.
No, if you cannot make a scissor, you don't know how to sharpen. A lot of people who sharpen scissor, they say, oh, I can sharpen all the scissor. Yeah, you can, but you don't know how to sharpen ours. Yes, he can sharpen that scissor, but for sure he will ruin the scissor, because they don't know if this is a clamshell or a bevel. They don't know the angle. They don't know how to polish the edges. They have absolutely no idea. And furthermore, all the scissors have a curved structure, so they're not flat and straight, they're curved. And if they cannot bend these metal by hammering, they will end up having a scissor that doesn't have the right feel and have the right pressure on the scissor when you're closing it. So you have to send them back to the place where they were made originally. That's the only way you can ensure that your investment of a scissor will keep on going.
Super, super. What if you would say 3 most important points for our hairdressers and what you want to transport to them, what would it be now when we talk about signature and your idea behind it?
First of all, I would say that we as even it's a scissor brand, we really are very dedicated elevating the cutting craft of the hairdresser. We can all cut hair on different levels, and regardless what level you have, we think it's important when you invest in a new scissor we are not just giving them a scissor. No, we really want them to learn how to use that scissor maximum. And that means that we actually also sell together with the scissor a new knowledge level. So we lift up the knowledge of your cutting level, and that means your customer will be more satisfied with the haircut. The haircut sometimes lasts longer for the client. So you in your salon can all of a sudden also maybe start charging more because you are getting more professional in the cutting. So I would say that's absolutely number one. Number two for me is really looking at the sustainability, because for me, we are having like one planet. And if I, as a hairdresser, can avoid buying 20 scissors in my career, but only buy maybe 4 or 5 different and use them throughout my whole career, I have done something to help, what can I say, the environmental part, because you only need to produce the steel once. You only need to transport it from the factory once. So by doing this, you are also having a green impact. And then I would say that last but not least, it gives me the freedom to become more creativity, because the scissor allows me all of a sudden to use my, I call it stomach feeling. You know, when you're cutting hair, you can have emotional feelings of the haircut that you're doing. And all of a sudden, when you really understand your scissor, they become an extension of your emotional hands. So if you want to do this, it does it without any interruption of an edge that doesn't can do it. So I think that's for me the most important, that it really can transport my emotional driven feelings into my haircuts.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah, we are working on a concept with you to present it to the hairdressers here in Poland. And I hope we will come up with a final concept in June, just to start to tell to the hairdressers what are they missing, because I totally agree, most of hairdressers do not know anything about the technology behind the scissors.
Yeah.
And they know everything about coloration, they know everything about scalp care, they know everything about hair structure and ingredients.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the topic which is the most emotional for them, no clue.
No, exactly. And it's, as I said before, it is the most important tool we have to cut our customer. That is my scissor that makes, at the end of the day, the money in the salon. Here, I buy a scissor, and every time I cut a customer, I get money into my company. When I want to do a color service, yes, I get money into my company, but I also have to spend money on colors each time. I have to spend money on all other things at the same time, foils, etc. Here, that's my scissor, that is my primary tool. And we do a lot of cutting. So I think the knowledge of cutting needs to be lifted, elevated, and we do it by educating in
Scissors.
In the scissor, because there is a big difference between a cheap scissor and the more expensive scissor and all those in the middle. There is a big difference, and we need to educate, so at least the hairdresser can make a choice based on knowledge when they have to purchase a scissor, and not based on just a sales rep doing their talking. So I think that's the important, that we want them to have a knowledge to make their choices from.
And can you now, the 3 scissors what you were talking about, texturizing, slicing, and enforcer, I give you for each scissor 1 minute that you just do it something, give texture, you slice, that the people can see it here on camera. Again, if we start with a, I don't know, slicing, enforcer.
With the slicing. We start with the slicing.
Okay.
Okay, so for me...
1 minute.
1 minute. I can't do it 1 minute, it takes more time.
Yeah, I know.
No, but again, as I said, first of all, now this is not a proper haircut, but anyway, For example, if I have a haircut and my customer, they want a bit of more root lifting or they want more airy hair, what I can do with this is I can simply take my sections up and I can come in with the tip of the scissor and working down. Here on the first 2 fingers, I'm creating volume. It means that I'm creating more root lift. If I go further out, I'm creating more like a area hair. So the hair starts to become more bouncy. Very good for blowout these days with the wavy hair. Mm-hmm. If I have like a cut where I want more texture, I want more movement, so like a shag, like a butterfly cut where you want that fluffy texture, I can come in and I can slice cut like this. And it all becomes invisible. So they're not there if they wear it straight, but when they wear it more like textured, they can add it to the hair because it's there. So they can like take it down away and they can add it. Then for me, one of my favorite techniques is really a technique where I come in and I play with the ends. So the ends, when I want them to become very feathery, I don't like to create a line. So for me, I'm always coming in with a C curve because that opens up the hair and create a long faded C curve. And that makes me a lot of wispy ends that really gives that softness to the hair that
Super.
Most people really like. If I have a very heavy haircut and I want it softer, I can come in on the ends and I can drop it in like here, cut straight in, and it will actually remove the bulkiness, but it's sitting inside. So now the hair will start bending in and it's more playful. So when the customer walks, the hair will follow their footstep rather than just sitting and becoming a wig. Okay. So all of a sudden you put some emotional parts into the hair. That means you bring the hair alive. So that's for me maybe the top techniques I really like. It can do many, many more things, but I think those are one of the ways that I use it mostly and have the biggest impact on my customer.
Okay, amazing. If I would be a hairdresser, I would take it.
Exactly. Then I think this one here, the Fusion, is probably the most misunderstood scissor in the world. Many, many people think this is a thinning scissor, and you couldn't be more wrong. It's a cutting scissor with a different attitude. For me, this is absolutely my most used scissor during a day. So if I count all my scissor and I'm looking at which scissor did I hold in my hand most of my minutes, that would be that one. Yes, it can do thinning, and yes, it can do cutting. Cutting is like it can cut scissor of a comb, it can cut straight lines with a soft texture, it can do graduation, it can do straight cut. So all that kind of cut, it does it phenomenal. There is just one rule, and that is keeping the cutting blade towards the scalp. So if I drop in here and I cut a few times, you would expect to see a cutting mark. But when I drop down, there is absolutely no line because it's cutting on the back part. Here goes the hair. You can see quite a lot of hair, but no lines because it's cutting on that blade. So that's the uniqueness of this scissor. So for example, if I want to create a straight line, I can actually drop that scissor in here and I can walk through the section almost like Pac-Man, the old computer game. And when you do that, you can actually create a straight line without any strong, what can I say, strong feeling. It's more like an emotional feeling that you get. So that's a way of using it for solid straight line with softness. I can use it for graduation. Then I prefer to use the trampoline technique. So we jump with the scissor, and that means that on the ends we are creating more like a soft texture. It means it blending more nicely. I can use it for like rough texture. I like to go in and twist the hair and working more like this because it really breaks the hair and gives me a lot of texture, but without creating any lines. So for this is probably my most important tool. I can use it for scissor over comb. It takes a bit more than a normal scissor, but it gives more flexibility. What I have heard is that if you are a man and you have gray hair tend to be more stiff.
Yeah.
If you cut your scissor over comb with that, you add a bit of texture and that gray hair feels softer. So a lot of men with gray hair, they feel that they have their hair back as they when they were young and had the normal pigment in the hair that was softer. So all of a sudden they actually feel that the hair is nicer and easier to style.
Super. Yeah, very interesting scissor.
Absolutely. And then I could say the normal scissor, as most people would call it, it's a point cutting scissor, and point cutting is all about making the strength on the end. So a point cutting scissor doesn't really cut on the back here. It's only cutting on the tip. You can always see a good point cutting scissor by holding these two in front of you, and you can actually see that the blade are making a crisscross.
Okay.
That's where it's powerful. So for me, what I use a point cutting scissor for is absolutely point cutting. You can do deep pointing, you can do middle, or you can do high pointing or chipping. So it adds different texture. If I do the chipping on men's hair, it will be worthless because when you put wax in, these ends are so wispy and fine so they will collapse. If I'm doing the deep pointing into my longer haircuts like a women, you will have trouble because they will sit like heavy lines. So when I do point cutting, I always have to look at what should I use my cutting for. Should I use it for blending or to create the ends? And it's the same down here. You can add chipping, which is more softer ends. Then you're cutting more straight in with a very aggressive scissor. It really takes off. You can also come in with medium and create almost like a line that sits more jacked, and that can be good in some type of fashion cutting. So the point cutting scissor is absolutely essential in my daily work, but because I have my slicing scissor, my straight line scissor, this doesn't need to do all the job. So this is like, yes, I do have a makeup brush, but I also have specialized brushes to do special areas. So I do have my slicing scissor for those areas, and I do have my blunt cutting, or I do have my texturizing with the teeth that can do different stuff in the hair.
Super, really amazing. So I'm very glad you are coming here to Poland and to learn us more about scissors. And I really feel that hairdressers are really open to this new knowledge, and we are opening up the eyes for them.
It's a journey. We need to open up their minds, at least so they make a choice in the future based on knowledge and not just feelings or scissor they got presented from a sales rep, but based on knowledge. And I think if we can open up their mind on the knowledge behind the scissor, and that we actually also adding a new level of cutting experience. We learn them how to cut hair in a different way. We educate them. So they're not just buying a scissor, they're also adding up their cutting knowledge. So they are really investing in their own future by choosing scissors like these. And yes, it takes time to build up that awareness, but I think step by step, and people will return, as you have seen, being very positive about the changes the scissor and the cutting method has changed their career. So once that water drop starts to spread out, more and more people will get interested in this type of scissor rather than just a normal scissor.
Super. So maybe last question, I invite you here on
you.
your seat. What can we expect from the scissor concept in the future? Are there any news? Are you working on new things you can share with us? Is there anything what hairdressers should know and wait for?
Definitely not wait for. They need to get started.
Yeah.
No, I would say that yes, obviously we are still developing. So for me, a scissor we need in the range is a long barber scissor. So we are developing a barber scissor that is called Zeta, and Zeta means in Greek 7-inch.
Oh, okay.
But we just added a few extra centimeters or millimeters, so it's actually a 7.2.
Okay.
And the reason for us to do that is because it makes a better balance in the scissor. And then we removed, normally a scissor would have the center screw in the center of the scissor, so you have the same length here and the same length here. We moved the center screw further back, and that means you need less action in your thumb. So when you open a scissor, you don't have to open your thumb that much to activate the blade. So the Zeta will be a scissor we will bring in during the autumn. Very good for barbers because they are doing a lot of scissor over comb, obviously, and very fast. Then we are adding in a new texturizing scissor. So now we have one with 30 teeth and we have one with 10. So we want to implement one in between, and that means that we will go with either 16 or 17. We're still testing, and that scissor will be called Zenith, and Zenith means the peak. So this is the peak of our design. It's merging in between the two scissors, so sometimes people think the one with 10 teeth is too much or too little, or vice versa, and then we have that one in between that really mercs in between, so you have for all type of hairdressers. Then we are developing some new scissor with rotating handle, so where the thumb can move, so that blade is the same, but this part here can rotate, and that means when you hold it in your hand, it's easier to get a proper grip, and a proper grip means you have less tension in your armrest, you get your shoulders further down, so you release a lot of pain. So those type of grip will be introduced in the autumn as well. So that's some of the new scissor we have in the progress.
Super, we're really looking forward. Klaus, thanks a lot. I see the passion from you to develop the whole industry in terms of cutting, and as far as I know, I see the passion in every innovation you're bringing to us, and I'm very positively surprised that you are leading the industry with innovations when we talk about hair dryers, straightening irons, but with scissors as well. So congratulations, we are very happy to have you.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you for letting me be here.
Yeah, we will see you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dziękujemy.
We're going to go for a commercial?
Yeah, I will do a commercial. Can you give me maybe one scissor?
Yeah.
Okay. Ten program jest sponsoringowany przez markę H.H. Simonsen Signature Scissors. Nożyczki, które są wykonane japońskiej najwyższej jakości stalu, które Wam daje radość przez następne 30-40 lat, ręcznie wykonane w Danii i daje Wam koncepcję, że Wy możecie na każde potrzeby używać inne nożyczki, żeby jeszcze więcej perfekcjonizować Wasze szerzenie na Waszych klientów. Thank you.